Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be speaking with you all today. My name is Aza Raskin. I am one of the co-founders for the Center for Humane Technology, and both one of the subjects and architects for the film The Social Dilemma, which I think really brings forth a conversation we've all been having just in a unified place. Um, and that has now been seen by 90 to 100 million people. So I couldn't think of a better time to be having this conversation now with you, especially around how we can deal with governance in an age of 21st century technology. So I want to zoom out and start with like, really what are we facing and where are we as a species? The real problem of humanity, I'm going to quote E.O. Wilson here, that we face is that we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. Um, and in fact, increasingly godlike technology. In other words, we are chimps with lasers, or uh, chimps with increasingly powerful autonomous lasers. And a lot of the problems that we are facing now is that our evolutionary emotions and instincts do not fit us well to handle technology whose lever is so long that when we move it a little bit, we do incredible amounts of damage. I mean, we also can do incredible amounts of good. The problem is that as we as a species has grown, our ability to make mistakes as a global species goes down because, you know, if you made a mistake when you're in a small tribe, or previously when we were just individual countries, you lost that tribe, that country. Now we are global. And the technology, especially the information intermediation technology, Facebooks, Google, TikToks of the world, these are global phenomena, so there is no control group. And it's why we are seeing, I think, the rise of a certain kind of authoritarianism or totalitarianism across many different countries at the same time, even though their cultures and their backgrounds and their histories and their particulars are very, very different. India to Hungary to Poland to the US. So we'll start here. This is a dotted line, but in particular, this dotted line represents human strengths, the things that we are best at, our most cognitively able abilities. And this is technology, the power of technology to overwhelm. And, the thing is, there's long been a technopop cultural fixation on the moment when technology overwhelms human strengths, when it becomes better than the things we're best at. And this is a very real issue. It's often called the singularity, future of works, jobs going away. But the fixation on this point misses something very important. And that is down here, this is human limitation, human vulnerability, human weakness. And the point is that technology starts to undermine human weakness way before it overwhelms all of human strength. And so the point that we lose control isn't the point when technology overwhelms the things we're best at, but when it can find the soft animal underbellies of our minds and exploit it. Because while we've been upgrading our machines, we've been downgrading our humanity. So I think a good place to start is, we are living in some sense in a kind of mythic time where we have godlike technology. And, what is the first rule of making wishes? Be careful what you wish for, because whatever you wish for will come true just in ways you do not expect, right? So what did we wish for? We wished for human attention, right? The top companies in on the US stock market, these are attention-based companies, companies that monetize the ability to grab attention. It doesn't seem that bad at the beginning. So what? It's just attention. It's just your time going here and there. But it's starting to change who we are. Because in fact, it's not just a monetization of attention. It's what you do with that attention. It's, in the words of Jaron Lanier in the film, the imperceptible change to your bias, beliefs, and behaviors. That's the ultimate product when the product we're selling, or Silicon Valley is selling, is free, right? How much did you last pay for Facebook? And this is getting so deep, it changes our very cognition. So Gloria Marx did this research that even when you do not get a notification on your phone, if you're just looking at a digital device, a screen, human beings now self-interrupt every 40 seconds. They just stop what they're doing and go check something else. And that's crazy. It's a kind of fragmentation, a fracking of the human mind. It makes long-form thought impossible, right? This is the result of our minds being terraformed by the objective functions that we put into the walls of our digital habitats, right? We'll come to this in a bit, but to call them social sites and social networks is to really obscure the true nature of things like Facebook and Google and Instagram and WhatsApp. These are immense digital habitats in which the largest of eclipse the size of, even the largest sovereign nations. Facebook has more users, more digital denizens than Google, or than China and India combined. And I think, in this terraforming of the human mind for the things that we wish for in the objectives of our corporations and our algorithms and the designs of our habitats, it's treating us like cattle. A friend of mine asked me a while ago, why is it? One of my projects, besides Center for Humane Technology, is the Earth Species Project, where we're using advanced machine learning to decode and translate animal communication and decode the first non-human languages. That's an entirely other talk, but I think it's a really interesting one. We've just had our first set of breakthroughs, but it means I'm thinking about animals and animal welfare a whole bunch. And that is, a friend asked me, why is it that we as Western societies systematically abuse farm animals? And I thought for a while, I was like, well, maybe it's something about the Enlightenment and like the ascendancy of man over nature, and a kind of like colonialism over the rest of the world. I'm like, oh, actually, it's really simple. It's that the cultures that outcompeted the other ones were the ones that learned to use animals as resources to exploit. Which companies are now outcompeting all the other ones? The ones that are learning to treat human beings as resources to exploit. And this is indeed what Shoshana Zuboff calls surveillance capitalism, which is harvesting the extra human behavioral surplus, where you click, where you go, when you use your phone, to create derived data streams that are then exploited for profit, right? And the kinds of things you can predict with these data sets are immense, because your phone is leaking data about where you go. You might not realize that some of your apps are leaking location data. You give it for, say, a weather app, it's sending it to a data broker that's getting back to the Facebooks of the world. So it's with current technology, when you go to work, when you've lost your job, who you're seeing, who your spouse is, if you're having an affair, whether you're depressed, whether like what kind of drugs you take, what diseases you may have. All of these things are computable as derived data off of this sort of behavioral surplus. We are a finite resource that is being exploited for profit. And in the process, it is destroying the things we hold most dear: our sense of self, our children's mental health, our relationships, and it's very clear in the US, like the very form of democracy. So what's going on, right? Well, this is an interconnected set of harms, right? because as our attention span shrinks, because we are overloading the human mind, the clock rate at which we have to process information is going up, right? Twitter has 240 characters, which means that the amount of content that you can put in any tweet goes down, which means the nuance goes down, which means the number of interactions goes up, which means the number of books read goes down. And as trust starts to erode because we can't have long form conversations without just getting angry at each other, right? Like an engagement-based economy, what does that do? It requires that algorithms put you into a social filter bubble with the people you most agree with, and then juxtapose you with the people you most disagree with, right? Because that creates the most engaging content. It's the thing that causes the engagement spirals. And we've seen this especially in the US, where you can find the perfect example of the other side doing the most horrendous thing. An infinite number of those examples surfaced in your news feed, followed by all the people that agree with you most. It is the perfect way to cause polarization, us versus them thinking. We have seen the rise of conspiracy like wildfire here. This is part of an interconnected set of harms, right? Where when we have large-scale digital habitats optimizing for human attention in the attention economy, surveilling us to build up large-scale models with nuanced understanding of being able to outpredict us, it downgrades our attention span, it downgrades our relationships, it downgrades our civility, it downgrades governance, mindfulness, shared truth, it downgrades everything. It downgrades humans. And it's honestly a national security threat. Why? Because the group of people that collaborates better always wins. Now, I'm not going to argue that I think what China is doing with social credit score, large-scale surveillance, and sort of a totalitarian state is better than a democracy. But it may be more efficient than a democracy, right? And if it's more efficient and you can align a large-scale group of people together, that group wins. Right? We've seen it exactly with the COVID response. So it is up to us to figure out what upholds the values of a democracy for the 21st century. Because unfettered free speech, let me say it a different way, unfettered speech, where each person has a bullhorn that can connect to an infinite other number of people, creates a world in which we cannot agree on truth, we cannot agree on fact, where we cannot even think our way to a good solution. And, it's a problem that if we do not solve, we are toast. Come to think of this as a kind of global climate crisis of culture, right? And here's the analogy. It's that with the climate crisis, with climate change, we've pointed the engines of capitalism at the finite resources of the earth, all in exchange for that exponential GDP curve. As we extract and hollow out the earth, we pollute our physical commons, and we create the conditions in which, there's drought, there are hurricanes. As I've just experienced living in California, we've had, the worst, second worst, third worst fires in modern history. Creates the conditions in which wildfires explode. It harms the most vulnerable of the populations first. That's climate change, physical climate change. And now we're experiencing social climate change and the social climate crisis, where Facebook and Google and TikTok and Instagram are making us brittle, where the engines of capitalism are now pointed at us, and we are hollowed out for our attention and for our beliefs, where we are pitted against each other, and it creates the conditions in which conspiracy spreads like wildfire, and disinformation and misinformation hit us like hurricanes. And if we don't solve the cultural climate crisis, we will not be able to align ourselves to solve the actual climate crisis. And we as humanity will not be able to rise to meet the very real challenges of the 21st century. It's existential, right? Because the amount of collaborative problem solving, of coming together to solve the problems, these are going up as time goes on. Like, our problems are just much more complex now. We're facing a threat from the GPT-3s of the world, of AI rising, of CRISPR, of COVID. In an interconnected world, our threats are going up, and our ability to cohere and solve them together is going down. And that makes it existential. I would actually go even further and say, it is not that technology in and of itself is an existential threat. Right? This is not sort of Terminators that we're talking about coming to get us. It's not technology that is the existential threat. It is the worst of society that is an existential threat. And technology is bringing out the worst of society. These companies would like to have us believe that what they show us is a mirror. They're just saying, hey, we're just reflecting you as you are. It's your fault. It's what you click on. Who are we to decide what to show you? Like, you're the ones clicking on stupid cat videos and increasingly radical YouTube videos. It's not our fault. But it's actually a fun house mirror. The menu of what we choose is already controlled. It's like a magician saying, pick a card, any card. But all the cards are already known. All right, so super fast. The attention economy creates a race to the bottom of the brainstem to grab our minds, which becomes a race to hack human instinct, right? And this gets back to the Paleolithic emotions, godlike technology, and undermining human weakness. Because to get your attention, it's not enough. We need to get you addicted to needing attention. And this creates the conditions in which, here, over 50% of surgeons in the US in 2017 said they had seen at least one patient, that had come in asking to look like their Snapchat filter. It's modifying who we believe we are. This is a picture of violence that you can't see, but this is about extremism. 64% of all extremist group joins on Facebook, this is according to their own internal research, published in the Wall Street Journal, 64% of extremist joins comes from their own recommendation system. It's changing who we are, because we spend one half of our lives in these large-scale synthetic habitats. And of course, the shape of the environment that we live in deeply affects everything about us. Here's another one. Here's the percentage of women with high depressive symptoms. So in 1991, just 17% of women were diagnosed as having high depressive symptoms, and that includes all the way up to suicide. And by the time we get to 2013, really it hasn't changed. But this is just when social media and smartphones start to become ubiquitous in our lives. And what happens? Well, by 2017, this number jumped to almost 30%. Nearly 1 out of 3 people, women with high depressive symptoms. It is changing who we are. Can't see that, but that's the citation. And here's another way that this kind of technology ends up changing who we are. This is the point of like the godlike technology and the lever to change us and requiring much more responsibility when we create. Right now, I don't know if you guys have tried it, Gmail has sort of a tab to autocomplete, and it sort of learns your voice over time. It's their AI auto recommendation system. But here's the question. what happens in just another 2 years when it's starting to complete more and more of your thoughts? And in fact, you start getting statistics that say when you hit tab to autocomplete, you are getting faster responses and you're getting more positive responses. You do better business when you start to autocomplete your personality. There is a recent demo of GPT-3. So GPT-3 is a large-scale neural net developed by OpenAI, trained on pretty much all of the internet and all the text out there, and every book, every tweet, that kind of thing. And it can sort of impersonate most people. If you put your Twitter in there, it starts to write like you. A friend put like a little blurb about me in there, and it wrote an entire article about some invented project called the Physical Web that I'd done at Mozilla. And it was a little witty, it was quite convincing, and it was something I had never done. Did the same thing for my co-founder for Center for Humane Technology, Tristan Harris, and it wrote a full op-ed that was like, oh, it has some good points. There's a startup now that's working on using GPT-3. So you just write bullet points and it expands it out to a full email. And that means in another 18 months, it's going to be pretty good. Who doesn't want to write just a couple bullet points and tab, boom, have it all written as an email? And of course, what's going to happen on the other side is that that you're not going to read full emails with all of those niceties. You just want to see the bullet points. And so we're going to have another AI that takes it from a full email back into just bullet points. And we're going to be living in a world where there are emails being sent back and forth that's nobody reading, just we're going to be reading the bullet points. And how ridiculous is that? It's like emailing and the niceties of human connection are just going to be a weird protocol that's sort of anachronistic. Another place of where this kind of thing is going, right, is the hyper sweetening of the kinds of images that we see. So right now on TikTok's actually very good at, in a couple minutes, figuring out exactly what kind of videos you like. If you like men, it'll figure out like which kind of men doing what kind of things. If you like women, like what kind of curve do you like? Do you like wearing what kind of clothes? It's quite good at it. But where this is going is that this is going to become computationally efficient and doable in the next, say, 4 to 5 years to start generating videos that perfectly match your preferences, right? You should start to expect to get text messages of from somebody that claims to have met you at a party, and maybe they've like like a bot has figured out from like an Instagram post or Facebook post someplace that you've been. So it's a party that actually you are at, and they send you a photo of you and them, and you're like, huh, I don't really remember them, but I definitely I'm there. That's me and them. And you start chatting with them, but it's really a bot that's been trained on all of your, say, emails or posts, so that it writes in a style that's uniquely inveigling, persuasive to you, right? Google could certainly do this, where they could look at all of your emails and learn either your style or learn the style of the emails that you respond quickly to or positively to, and learn the style that's uniquely persuasive to you, and then sell that as a service. Now, it's really interesting, that case, because no privacy law was broken, right? It's not like they were selling your data. They're just selling access to a model to advertisers that is giving the ability to persuade you uniquely. And so as we think about data privacy laws, it is really important to realize that it's not just about data anymore. It's about the derived models, the simulations you can build on top of somebody's data that can be just as, if not more, damaging than the original privacy data itself. And we do not have any laws yet to handle situations like this. All right. I think I went on a little bit of a rant because I'm getting excited. But to bring it back to the way that this is changing who we are, over 1 billion hours are viewed daily on YouTube, and actually this number is pretty old now. It's probably 1.5 or 2x that, because we're post-COVID. And over 70% of those are from recommendations. algorithms are deciding the input to our species. This is also a little bit old data, but I still think it's really important. This is from 2017, and it's what percentage of results promote flat Earth theory. This is Guillaume Chassel's work. And so a Google search, 20%, if you just type sort of flat Earth. YouTube search, 35%. But YouTube recommendations is 90%. Because those are the things, conspiracies are the things that really grab your attention. What? That can't possibly be true. Now, it's important to note that YouTube has fixed this, but it's just one of many, many, many examples. And we're seeing this now all over Facebook, all over YouTube. In the US, during the wildfires, there were rumors spreading, again, exactly like wildfire, because climate change, social climate change, of leftist Antifa setting fire intentionally to make to start these grand wildfires. Wasn't true, but as one of our friends, Renee DiResta, a misinformation researcher, says, if you can make a trend, you make it true. So this is from April of 2019. Like, what kind of things is YouTube biasing us towards? If we are putting 70% of information through humanity's heads, like, what is the bias? Well, what are the things that get most attention? So these are the keywords that are most highlighted, that are most promoted by YouTube. So it's get schooled, shreds, debunks, dismantles, debates, rips, confronts, destroys, hates, demolishes, obliterates. Because why? Because if YouTube, right, has sort of a spectrum of from calm to crazy, which do you think gets more engagement? Well, obviously crazy. And so we are tilting humanity towards our crazier selves. It's not that technology is an existential threat. It's that the worst of society is an existential threat. Technology is bringing out the worst of society. And I think it lands us at this really important point. Sort of Larry Lessig has a great phrase that code is law. In fact, it's stronger than law, because law are rules that tell you what you can and cannot do, but they do not also enforce the law at the same time. Something that gets decided after the fact. Coding, there is no choice. You are stuck in the system as it's coded. And so coding at scale is inherently political. Okay, summary. Living in synthetic habitats, plus all of artificial intelligence, times an extractive attention economy, means downgrading our humanity. And that is the problem we need to solve. Sort of want to skip past some of these. Oh, no, I don't actually. Excuse me. So I just want to return for a second to this graph. This is the point when technology surpasses human strengths. That's popularly known as the singularity. And this point here, which is after technology started to surpass human weaknesses, which it's already happened, right? Like tech addiction is just one great example. All the examples I gave of, body dysmorphia, 50% of plastic surgeons over them seeing patients that ask to look like Snapchat filters. These are surpassing fundamental human limits. Cognitive overload, deepfakes and the ability to no longer tell what's real or fake, another one. At some point, we hit the human limit singularity, where technology and what we've asked it for, what we've wished for from it, starts to overwhelm enough of us that technology and what we programmed into it has its hand more on the pen of history and culture than we do, when we have lost control. And the question is, how close are we to this? We're pretty close. I just wanted to show this example. This is actually 2018, so it's pretty old now, and hopefully it won't lag too much, but none of these people are real. This is a computer dreaming up faces by having looked at a number of faces and learning how to create more. Um, uh, it really works. You guys should Google for these things. And actually, because we're now at the end of 2020, the visuals are much, much, much better, because you can't tell. What happens when we lose the ability to tell what's real or fake, when we enter truly the synthetic valley? Well, it starts to erode our ability to even know what was true. It begins to erode our memory. Elizabeth Loftus famously showed, she's an American memory scientist. She famously showed that it's very easy to implant a false memory. You invite somebody into a lab and you give them 3 memories, 2 of which are real, gathered from friends and family, 1 of which is fake. 25% of the time, 2 weeks later, the fake memory has been implanted. You can raise that number up to 50% with a fake, with a doctored photo. And what she then showed is that if you can make a false memory, you change what somebody does in the past. So if you implant a false memory of getting sick eating an egg as a kid, you're more likely to avoid eating eggs for the next month. If you implant the false memory of having a great time at Disneyland as a kid, more likely as an adult than you are to buy Disneyland tickets. So your memory changes your behavior. What happens when we can no longer trust our memories, or our memories are getting easily hacked? Well, memory is the foundation of identity. Identity is the foundation of everything. Here's another one. This is another 2019 paper. This is the first time that scientists successfully, humanity, figured out how to pull memory from matter that is given just a brain. Can we get your memories out? What they did was they took a macaque monkey and they stuck a probe into its brain, into its visual cortex. And then they faced that monkey at a screen, and they had the screen generate image after image after image, powered by AI, tweaking, trying to make that neuron fire more and more and more and more. And what they found is, 1, they could do this. 2, they could make that neuron fire way more than for any naturalistic image. This is a hyper normal, hyper sugary image. And what they found were, you can start to see some of these things, these really spooky images emerge, very trippy, very psychedelic, but you can clearly see that there are researchers with white masks and eyes. There are monkey faces. In some of the other images, you can see bars. The scientists, when you read the paper, report being able to identify the monkeys seen in these images. We are reverse engineering the human animal. And this is the sort of thought I'd like to leave you with, which is, if you were to zoom out and ask, where are we as a species, sort of where we started? Well, you guys heard of Fermi's paradox? It's that if you count up the number of galaxies in the universe, times the number of stars in the universe, times the number of planets in those universe, times the probability that there are ones which can develop life, the universe should be teeming with life, and yet we see none. Why is that? Now, there are many possible answers, but Fermi proposed that there might be this thing called the Fermi's gate, that species evolve to such a place where they implode, they kill themselves. And that might be, say, he created this thinking that was nuclear war, that the game theory of nuclear war just means at some point we will kill ourselves, and we haven't so far, but we're not out of the woods yet. But here's perhaps another Fermi's gate, and it's this: it's that every species sufficiently technologically advanced will eventually turn the telescope of its own intelligence back on itself, right? And start to reverse engineer how they work. How to open up their skull and pull on their own strings. We've been doing that externally with social media and with our technology. And we are getting very close to be able to do this directly with things like Neuralink. And once you start to yank on your own string, which controls your arm, which yanks on your hand more, it creates a kind of feedback loop, just like when you take a video camera and you point it at a screen, which is then connected back to the screen, and you get this infinite loop. And what do you get? You get noise, you get chaos. This, I think, is a kind of civilizational bottleneck that we are now facing. It's going to happen in our lifetimes. And the question is, can we get through? And I think we can, but it comes with a very clear-eyed look at who we are. Just want to jump ahead just a little bit, right? We need to be starting to think about human protective design. When we have technology that is godlike, we need godlike wisdom to match it, right? We need new 21st century human rights that understand our limitations and our weakness, not because we want to call them out as something that's bad, but rather so that we can design around them as exoskeletons to enhance the things we're most brilliant at. Right? We need to move from being as sophisticated about technology, or rather, we need to move from being sophisticated about technology, which no doubt we are, to being sophisticated about human nature. Right? And that means understanding everything from our physiology, how we breathe, just like when we look at email, we get actually email apnea. We hold our breath because it's a stressful thing to do, which changes our cognitive state, to our emotions, to our attention and cognition and the interplay of all three, to how we make sense of the world and how we make decisions together and alone, right? To how we do social reasoning, to group dynamics, and eventually social environment, right? It's this complete stack of what it means to be human we have to understand and take into account when we design, or else when we make technology, we will bend and fold human beings in ways we do not go, and we will be torn, especially as we enter this feedback loop cycle. But one of the most hopeful things I know is that even though with chaos you cannot predict what's going to happen, initial conditions matter a lot. And I would argue this talk, yeah, it's about technology, but fundamentally, it's about humanity. And maybe the next step we need to have is a very clear-eyed and compassionate look at us as a species. Our brilliance places, our vulnerabilities. I mean, even things as simple as confirmation bias, so our minds being essentially accumulators of evidence that are just looking around trying to find all the things that we already agree with. To rhyming bias, human beings believe things to be more true that rhyme. It's true, who knew, right? We need this clear-eyed and compassionate look at who we are, because to make humane technology is at least as hard as working on our own egos. So that we can decide what we're going to do about it. Thank you. Oh, that's right. Because I think if we do, right, then we get to embrace our Paleolithic emotions, upgrade our medieval institutions, so we have the wisdom to wield our godlike technology. And what we will get are brilliant attention spans, brilliant relationships, brilliant civility, creativity, shared truth. We can be us brilliant humans. So thank you. If you want to dive in further, we interview sort of like the leading experts from everything from disinformation to magic to how the mind works to Audrey Tang, who digital minister for Taiwan, who's working on some of the most interesting solutions out there. So recommend checking out Your Undivided Attention, as well as watching The Social Dilemma. I will see you all over in the, fireside chat section.